What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video, since we've got the Fire and Ice Hatch Day, which by the way is the laziest event title of all time, but anyways, I figured we'd revisit the triple level 50 baby team with Smoochum, Magby, and Elekid. Now I think of all the teams I've showcased on this channel over the years, this is probably the one I'd personally hate to be playing against, because if you win, you're just beating up a bunch of babies, but if you lose, I don't think there are many more embarrassing things that can happen in the Go Battle League. Of course, this team lost more than it won, but I was still able to pull off some pretty crazy wins with it, and I had tons of extremely close losses too, so this should make for a very entertaining video. Now before we get into the question today, I do want to quickly give a shout out to Hoflation for the donation in my recent live stream. As always, the support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, let's now finally get into the question of the day. What Pokemon would you like to see get a baby form in a future generation? Feels like we haven't had a new baby Pokemon in quite a long time, so let me know in the comment section down below. And with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle, leading Smoochum into a Malamar. Now, honestly, this is not that bad of a matchup, just because we are going to pace the same. I'm also going to win CMP in this matchup, and I am resisting the Psywave damage. Now, the opponent full sends a superpower for some reason. I'm not really sure why. I saw a few Malamar in the lead, and a lot of them full send a superpower when foul play is already super effective. It also does not debuff them, so honestly, genuinely really shocking decisions on my opponent's end here. But I guess, I mean, how often do you actually face up against a Smoochum in the Go Battle League? I guess it's kind of just thrown them off a little bit. Either way, we're going to fire off the Thunder Punch. Unfortunately, that is not enough damage. So here, I'm going to go for a Brick Break just in case they end up shielding. Of course, that does allow me to farm them down slightly easier. Now, anyways, we're going to come back in with the Smoochum. I've got back-to-back Ice Punches already loaded, and I am going to throw them straight away. I'm going to throw them at least before the opponent can reach a potential foul play here. And honestly, from this range, I can probably just shield once. I don't think they're quite at back-to-back charge moves. So we're going to shield the foul play, go for the farm down, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Charge Bug. So this is fine with me because we can go for a Psyshock. Psyshock is going to grab the final shield. We're going to bank the next Psyshock and then swap out into my Magby. What this is going to do is allow me to reach a Fire Punch here as the opponent gets to back-to-back discharges. But of course, Magby going to win CMP up against the Charger Bug. Fire Punch, not quite enough damage to get the knockout, but it doesn't matter because Smoochum does have a second Psyshock already loaded. So we're going to throw it immediately as we come back in. And from this range, Psyshock takes out the Charger Bug, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there is the next battle. I can see Smoochum into Shadow Typhlosion. So, of course, that is not a great lead matchup for me. I'm going to be swapping out after throwing one Powder Snow and then coming in with my Magby. Now, unfortunately, even a Thunder Punch non-stab is going to do quite a lot of damage. The opponent now going to come in with a Quagsire after grabbing that shield advantage. And I'm going to go for a Brick Break, throwing on CMP with a potential Aqua Tail, and the opponent is going to throw straight away. So, of course, they take out the Magby there. I'm now going to come in with the Smoochum, and I'm going to farm up. I'm going to throw on CMP with a potential Stone Edge, and Psyshock from this range is going to get the knockout. And once again, going to throw one Powder Snow, then swap out into Elekid, and the opponent comes in with a Credilli. Now, of course, they've still got two shields in play here, but the opponent is actually going to shield the first Brick Break, which I think is quite surprising there. Of course, every time I throw a Brick Break, it is going to drop their defense and deal more damage, but now the opponent can, of course, then go for a debuff with a Rock Tomb, but I'm just going to no-shield this, come back in with the Smoochum, and I'm actually going to shield here. Now, the reason for this, I believe the Typhlosion has a Thunder Punch loaded, but they opt for the extra Incinerate. Now they can go for a Blast Burn. However, the opponent probably doesn't realize they lose CMP to a level 50 Smoochum. Psyshock number 2 gets the KO. We can Powder Snow farm down Credilli, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent into the next battle. I can see Smoochum into Primeape. Now, unfortunately, this is not the best matchup for me just because they can outpace me to these Rage Fists, and I believe Primeape will actually win CMP up against my Smoochum specifically. Not necessarily if I had maybe a Hundo or even like a Best Buddy boosted level 51 Smoochum. I think then there is a bit of overlap there, but unfortunately with a 12 attack, my Smoochum IVs just not the best there. But either way, it doesn't really matter too much because they're going to outpace me anyways. I'm going to fire off the Psyshock number 2. Psyshock is going to be shielded, and now I'm going to come in with my Magby. Now, all shields are down. They are double boosted already. Rage Fist does huge damage. We barely hang on. I fire off a Brick Break here. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter, but potentially if the opponent did try and swap out and catch onto a Pokemon that resists the fire typing, then maybe Brick Break would have been better. However, of course, up against Toxapex, both those moves are resisted anyways. Now, anyways, we're going to come in with the Elekid, and the opponent is going to go straight for an Energy Ball. This is huge for me because I can bank the energy and come in with Smoochum. I would win CMP, but but the opponent doesn't actually throw any energy. Now I go for a slight undercharge here. Unfortunately, it's still enough damage to get the knockout. Now I need Elekid to lock in here. We've got back-to-back Thunder Punches, but Toxapex is super bulky. First one does decent damage, but it doesn't look like a second Thunder Punch will KO. It's a CMP tie. Thunder Punch doesn't quite deal enough damage, and unfortunately the opponent gonna be reaching a Brine. Brine takes out the Elekid, and unfortunately I lose that game. Now, I do have to say, Elekid definitely felt like the weak link just because the other two Pokemon are quite attack-weighted, so even though they don't have the best stats, they can at least deal a lot of damage in positive matchups, whereas Elekid, unfortunately, unless you're going up against like a Mantine, like Thunder Punch just isn't actually dealing that much damage. So here, luckily for us, we are up against a Mantine, so that is great because we can go for a Thunder Punch. This is double super effective, and it very comfortably gets the KO there. And we've also got a Brick Break loaded for the Hisuian Electro to come back in. So of course, Brick Break on its own, not going to deal too much damage. It is non-stab, but we can just permanently debuff their defense here, or at least force the opponent to throw some energy. Otherwise, they are going to be debuffed. So Brick Break number 2 actually going to grab a shield, and we're still going to force them to throw because these Thunder Shocks are not dealing much damage to me at all. Energy Ball is going to get the knockout. We're going to come in. They're already double debuffed. They likely don't go for a wild charge here. I'm going to shield the Energy Ball, and the opponent is actually just going to concede the match. Honestly, I don't know what they had in the back, but likely something weak to the ice typing. They realized we were going to Powder Snow farm them all the way down, and so they just concede. But GG's to our trainer into next battle. We're going to see a Quick Attack Diggersby in the lead. So this is going to be what should seem like a positive matchup for me because, of course, I've got Powder Snows, I've got Ice Punch. However, Fire Punch is probably going to one-shot me, and I expect them to go for back-to-back here. So I swap out into my Magby, trying to catch a second Fire Punch, but it backfires as the opponent holds onto the energy. They full send a Scorching Sands before coming in with a Azumarill, which unfortunately is an awful matchup for me. They completely wall everything I throw, and whilst yes, I could go for Fire Punches as it is going to be a bit more energy efficient, I might as well just debuff their defense here. So we go for Brick Break number 2. The opponent is eventually going to throw some energy here instead of farming me down, and they full send a Hydro Pump. That is actually quite nice for me. We come in with the Elekid. The opponent going to swap back into their Diggersby, so I'm going to come in, bank some energy on the Elekid, fire off the Ice Punch. Ice Punch gets the knockout, and let's see what their final Pokemon is. The opponent is not going to come back in with the Azumarill, instead coming in with Mightyena, and unfortunately we just barely miss out on reaching a last second Ice Punch, but we've got a lot of energy here. We go for Brick Break number 1, we grab the final shield, and we've just debuffed. The Mightyena is not very tanky. Brick Break gets the knockout. They come back in with the Azumarill, but they barely outpace me by a single turn. Is it the Hydro Pump? It absolutely is. Unfortunately, that easily takes out the Elekid there, and we end up losing that game. But GG's up on there into the next battle. We can see another Malamar in the lead. Now, I have to say, shout out to Home-Size Henry because he just put out a video featuring Emolga, and actually, before I'd even finished watching that video, which I watched as soon as it went up, I already faced 2 people that were using copycat teams, and it is actually crazy the influence that he has on the meta because, like, they couldn't have even finished watching that video before they decided, you know what, I'm going to run that exact team. They probably have no idea how to play the team, and I think, again, that was another Malamar that went for a superpower there before they swapped out. Either way, at this point, I realize if it is the Emolga in the back, my Elekid is going to be pretty fine, and as well, Smoochum is going to be able to hit for super effective damage, so we can just come in with the Elekid. The opponent, I'm not sure if they did bank a charge move there or not. Honestly, it doesn't matter too much because we can go for a Thunder Punch. Thunder Punch going to deal decent damage, and I'm just going to wait for them to throw. The opponent is going to go for a foul play that doesn't quite get the knockout, but we can't quite snipe them with the Powder Snow damage on my Smoochum. So we should, again, they go for superpower. Honestly, I don't really understand what typing do they think Smoochum is, but either way, we're going to go for the Ice Punch here. Ice Punch, go to grab the final shield, and they try to throw on CMP, but once again, Smoochum winning CMP. Ice Punch gets the knockout, and we can just Powder Snow farm down the Ninetales to take that game. But GG's up on there into the next battle. We're going to see Florges in the lead. So this is going to be another matchup where Smoochum can win CMP, and we will pace the same here to a potential Chilling Water. So I'm going to fire off the Side Shock. Side Shock going to deal decent damage here. And now I'm actually going to use a shield. Now they go for a Trailblaze, which means that maybe I could swap out into Magby to catch the next one. However, it is quite likely that they go for a Chilling Water this time around. So we swap out into Elekid, and it is that Chilling Water. We get the Powder Snow, the Thunder Shock farm down, and the opponent's now going to come in with a Jump Off. Now, I've already been debuffed here, so honestly, it doesn't really matter what I throw. My charge moves aren't going to do much damage at all, but we go for a Brick Break first, and now we fire off a Thunder Punch. Honestly, doesn't really matter too much. A Fire Punch from my Magby or a Ice Punch from my Smoochum should be enough damage to get the knockout, but here, honestly, I make a big mistake. What I was going to do anyways, since they were one Fairy Wind away from the next Energy Ball, is go for one Powder Snow and then swap out. For some reason, I did not commit to that, and as a result, the opponent swaps into Empoleon. If I swapped out when I was intending to swap out anyways, I could actually get to a back-to-back Brick Break here and grab the final shield, whereas now, unfortunately, whilst I've got back-to-back Side Shocks and slightly more than that, the Jump Off is one away from a charge move, so it doesn't really matter what I do. So the opponent goes for the full Metal Sound Farm Down, taking out the Smoochum, and unfortunately I lose that game. But GG's to opponent there. Into the next battle, we see another Typhlosion in the lead. And once again, unfortunately, Magby, not very bulky, so I will have to shield a Thunder Punch. But the opponent's now going to come in with a Mighty Enna. So, of course, we've got Brick Break. They no-shield the first. That does insane damage and actually allows me to fully farm them down there just before the opponent reaches a potential crunch. Or even a Poison Fang there, actually. But Brick Break is going to connect. I'm now going to swap into Elekid, and the opponent doesn't go for a Thunder Punch. Instead, just allowing me to fully farm them down there. And their final Pokemon, really spicy team on the opponent's end, by the way. They've got a Shadow Manectric, which wins CMP up against the Elekid. However, this is a Psychic Fangs. Psychic Fangs barely doesn't get the knockout, and that should guarantee the win for me, as of course, Brick Break gonna grab the final shield. Now, we can just come in with the Smoochum. Doesn't really matter if we win CMP or not. The opponent can't really afford to throw a charge move here because we get the Side Shock. All shields are down on the opponent's end, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's upon there. Into the next battle, we're going to see Fortress in the lead. So, this is not a great matchup for me. I'm going to be swapping into my Elekid because I do at least have neutral damage here to apply with the Thunder Shocks, with the Brick Breaks potentially, and Thunder Punch. But the opponent is going to swap out into a Florges. Now, we've already grabbed a shield advantage. Honestly, that's pretty great for me. But we can outpace them here. If the opponent loses track of the energy, then potentially we will get to 2 more Thunder Punches before they do throw the next move. And the opponent is going to throw on CMP. And Elekid, not actually that attack weighted, but it does win CMP up against the Florges, and we get them very low. Now, I did think about shielding there and committing to a farm down, but they go for a Trailblaze. I was already debuffed. The opponent then would have been boosted. Maybe that would have been a simultaneous KO anyways, whereas here, I'm hoping that Magby with 2 shields can sweep in the endgame, and honestly, it's not looking too bad for me, but the opponent does have the potential to go for an Icy Wind bait here, which of course costs more energy, but it is unfortunately going to mean that Brick Break doesn't get the knockout, but also the opponent makes a savage catch there, catching the Brick Break onto the Fortress. Really nice play on the opponent's end. I'm now going to go and full send the Fire Punch. Fire Punch is going to grab the final shield, and now I swap into my Smoochum. Now, maybe I should have gone for another Brick Break there, expecting to grab a shield from the opponent, because now the opponent, well, they can go for a big overfarm here, because unfortunately, a Side Shock is not going to do enough damage. They come back in with the Seeking here, and we can reach a Side Shock, but that only gives them more energy, and Magby, I believe we are still 2 away from the next charge move. The opponent, however, already at back-to-back Sand Tombs, so they can fire off the first one, grab my final shield. Sand Tomb number 2, of course, takes out the Magby from that range, and unfortunately I lose that game. But honestly, really nice catch from the opponent there, catching that Brick Break onto the Fortress. But GG's to that trainer. Into the next battle, we are going to see a Clodsire in the lead. Now, depending on the IVs of this Clodsire, this could be quite a dicey matchup here, because what I'm hoping is if they go for a Stone Edge, I can fire off 1 Side Shock, and then if they no shield here, commit to a full Powder Snow farm down. And luckily for me, that is the perfect range. The opponent reaching a second Stone Edge just as they go down there, and now they're going to come in with a Primate. They've already seen Side Shock, so Side Shock should be grabbing both shields from the opponent, and then I'm just going to swap out into my Elekid. Now, honestly, like, using these Pokemon as safe swaps, like, it's kind of hard to know which one to swap into, because they don't really have the same coverage at all. They are weak to the ground typing, which is a similarity, but that's basically it. So, unfortunately, like, pretty tricky situation. It's hard to tell which one will be useful in the end game here, but either way, I'm going to come in with the Magby. Magby is, of course, a little bit more attack weighted than the Elekid. Fire Punch gets the knockout, and in the end, it was the right call. critical because they've got Hisuian Electrode in the backline. However, actually, I don't think it really matters too much. Smoochum probably would have reached an Ice Punch anyways, but we can come in, Powder Snow Snipe them, and get the knockout. So GG's to that trainer there. Into the next battle, we're going to see another opponent running the exact same team from Homesize Henry, and honestly, like, even if they do play well, I know the team already. Once I see that Ninetales Safe Swap, which we are going to see here, as I farm up to back-to-back charge moves, unfortunately, my reactions were really bad there, but it doesn't really matter because we see the Shadow Ninetales, we know it's going to be Emolga in the backline, in which case, we can now just come in with the Magby. I know Elekid has a pretty good matchup into the Emolga because, of course, I do resist everything they can throw. So here, we're just going to no-shield this. We're going to no-shield once again, and even an Edgeable won't quite get the knockout from this range. The opponent tries to snipe me with the Psywave damage from the Malamar, but Magby says no. Fire Punch, gonna connect, does decent damage. We can come in with the Smoochum, and they are certainly in range where we can just shield once, go for a full Powder Snow farm down. I know that my energy is very strong into the Emolga in the backline. All I have to do here is make sure the opponent does not make the catch onto their Ninetales, and I should be looking fine. So we're going to go for back-to-back Ice Punches here. Second one, going to grab the final shield. I'm now going to swap out and make the catch myself as I'm able to catch likely a Discharge. So Discharge is resisted damage, and actually, we're going to find out that Acrobatics would actually get the KO from this range despite being resisted. However, that honestly does not matter because now we force them to full send the big move, which means we can outpace them to the Ice Punch. Ice Punch takes out the Emolga, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there into the next battle, and shout out to this trainer, by the way, because I feel like I battle them like every other day. It's crazy. I recognize their in-game name, so, I mean, maybe if I paid more attention, maybe I'm actually batting a lot of the same trainers all the time, but this one definitely stands out, so either way, we are going to see a Rage Fist coming through. I'm going to swap out into my Elekid, and unfortunately, they will outpace me to the next move. However, they would have outpaced my Smoochum either way, so we are now going to look to overfarm. I'm going to throw a Thunder Punch just before they do reach another Rage Fist here, and I actually don't know who wins CMP in this matchup. However, the opponent goes for the overfarm, so I'm not going to find out, but honestly, I don't mind that because Thunder Punch is going to get the knockout. Now, of course, all shields are down. The opponent can just barely outpace me here, firing off the Octail. Octail is going to get the KO up against the Elekid, but we can come in with the Smoochum, and this is just going to be an Octail. Of course, they could have gone for a crunch, but we'd win CMP, but Octail actually gets the knockout Smoochum. That is so disappointing because now Octail is super effective. Magby doesn't quite get one shot there, but actually, it doesn't really matter at this point. Fire Punch, gonna connect up against the Pharaoh. They can just peck fire me down there, and unfortunately, I lose that game. But GG's to our trainer into the next battle, we're going to see a Unnovan Stunfisk in the lead. So a great lead matchup for the Smoochum because we can tank a Mud Bomb like relatively comfortably. I mean, by Smoochum standards anyways. But we are going to see the opponent is going to try and swap out and catch a move onto Mantine. And Mantine is just not a safe swap when I've got Elekid in the back because the opponent can go for a Water Pulse. We can tank that once again pretty comfortably by Elekid standards or by baby Pokemon standards in general. Thunder Punch gets the knockout there. And the opponent cannot go for a full farm down, at least by the time I get to back-to-back Brick Breaks here and get them incredibly low. So I'm going to go for another Brick Break here. The obvious play would be to come in and try and snipe with my Smoochum, but I'm going to overfarm, then snipe at the last second. They lose all of their energy. They've got a Kingdra in the back, and despite the fact that I've got Magby in the backline, it does not matter. Back-to-back Psyshock should be grabbing both shields from the opponent, and even though, of course, Surf easily one-shots us, Fire Punch is double resisted. We can just go straight for these Brick Breaks here. Of course, first one, gonna deal decent damage, and honestly, I'm kind of tempted to just go for a Fire Punch BM. I know this is double resisted damage, but I've just dropped their defense. It looks like we actually win CMP in this matchup. Fire Punch, double resisted, but it takes out the Shadow Kingdra for that BM, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there into the final battle of this video, once again leading into a Shadow Annihilate. So once again, we're going to win CMP in this matchup, but the opponent is going to look to overfarm. We go for Psyshock, Psyshock is going to be shielded, and now I swap out into Elekid. Fair play, if they want to full send a close combat, then they're more than welcome to do so, but they go for a Rage Fist, which means I can tank that. It looks like Elekid does actually win CMP in this matchup, and so I'm able to grab the final shield from the opponent. However, unfortunately, I don't know if that really helps me, just because, well, they go for an undercharge, which is is quite a nice play, and whilst, yes, I've got a 2-shield advantage, I'm going to have to use one of those shields here, and I'm taking big damage from these low kicks at this point, because they're already double boosted, they're now triple boosted with a 3rd Rage Fist, and here I do look to overfarm just a little bit as I fire off the Fire Punch. Fire Punch gets the knockout, they're going to come in with a Fearer, I'm going to bank a Fire Punch, then swap into my Smoochum, but unfortunately they've got a Tinker Taunt in the back. So of course, I'm going to go for Side Shock as it does do a lot more damage than an Ice Punch, and both moves are resisted. Here, I'm going to no-shield this, but Bulldoze doesn't quite get the knockout, which means I can't quite overfarm as much as I would like to. We come in with the Magby, we throw as late as possible here, but I don't think I'm going to reach back-to-back moves into this Fearow, so potentially I should have thrown earlier just to leave myself a little bit healthier, but we go for Fire Punch. Fire Punch gets them low, but not quite low enough. They can peg farm me down, they live on 1 HP in a dream, and unfortunately I lose that final game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.